98.5.
Peace to the elders, the ancestral giants. Peace to gods and goddesses past, present, and future. Peace to kings, queens, and royal families all over. And peace to you, brothers and sisters. You tune into Oak 93.5 FM Africans United, Know Thyself Black Power Radio, where ancient wisdom meets modern truth. Today we have with us the Honorable Brother Ausar Men.
Anakasar, a BB for Hodier, African liberation, black liberation, African power, black power, for every black man, woman, and child on the planet. We are the original people. I am the original man. I am a son of Africa. Peace to the listening audience. We have a very important discussion today on part 2 in our discussion about reparations.
And the Queen, Dr. Kimberly Muktarian.
Well, peace, kings and queens out there in the land that we live, and we're here today because guess what? It's time for repair, and we are going to take ownership of what is due the African American people, Africa from here to there, and we're here to bring Africa to you right here in Raleigh, North Carolina.
And I'm Escents Divine, and today we will continue a powerful conversation about reparations and restitution. We'll examine historical cases where governments acknowledge wrongdoing, issued apologies, paid compensation, or restored damages after genocide, colonialism, land theft, and slavery. So let's start at one of the strongest historical points, compensation of slave owners, such as the British slave owners' compensation of 1833, France demanding payments from Haiti after the revolution, the United States even paid slave owners around the D.C. area with the Compensation Emancipation Act in 1862. So let me start with a question. What does slave owner compensation reveal about the government?
That's good.
Yeah. Go first.
Yes, sir. Well, you know, what it says about the government is that they were never, they never meant to release us anyway. That was just what we believe to be, there's something called, I'm looking for the words here, but basically it's busy work. It looked like they let us go. But they never. If you released the slave, but you compensated the masters,
Right.
then you really didn't let the institution of slavery go. Because if it was wrong, supposedly you stopped slavery because it was a wrong institution. Mm-hmm. But if you're paying the people who actually did the wrong, then you didn't let go of the institution. And so that is henceforth why we look the way we do today. If you go back, you'll see that even in the 13th Amendment, like immediately after the Emancipation Proclamation is their declaration of letting us go, immediately they start putting in policies that put us back in. And the 13th Amendment basically says that if you committed a crime, then you will be put back in servitude.
Right.
So basically you didn't end slavery, you just copped it and revamped it. And you packaged it in another way. So, of course, you're going to compensate the masters because you still have slaves, and you put it in the next form of policy.
True indeed. Brother, sir?
Yes, I would just like to say that I think what this shows us is that for one, they had us in chattel slavery. Mm-hmm. We was enslaved. So we were not considered as human beings, as people. We was considered property, no better than the beast in the field, right? And I think that what this shows us, with them compensating the slave owners, is that they were reimbursing them, giving them reparations for loss of property, right? So I think that it's important for us to understand that we are still living in a slaveocracy today in the United States. And that's one of the reasons why the United States voted against the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity, because they still are doubling down on that it was legal at the time in their eyes. And so they refuse to even acknowledge any type of wrong because the way they look at us today, and they're always coming up with different policies and laws that affect us in a negative way, the way the great Derek Bell expressed in critical race theory. Right? So I think it's important for us to understand as a people that in this country we're not looked at as we know that we're spiritual beings, but we're not even looked at as human beings.
That's right.
We are still looked at as property, and so they would rather, pay reparations through to those who committed the crimes instead of paying reparations to black people all over the world, African people who deserve reparations.
Right. And to both of y'all points, I think, if I am mistaken, the 14th Amendment says, to Dr. Kim talking about the amendment and Brother Ausar speaking about property.
Yes.
The 14th Amendment says also when you consider yourself something other than yourself, basically a Negro or African American, such as those things, it says that you're still saying that you're property of the nation.
Right.
So that's another thing, we better start recognizing who we are. So another quick question on that point: How did the compensation to the enslavers help preserve the racial wealth in inequality?
Well, that's easy. And I mean, that's really easy.
Yeah.
They didn't even need that to maintain the wealth gap that they created over the last 300-something years through the enslavement of our ancestors, and even after that, even what's going on today. See, when we're talking about reparations, we have to understand it's not just for us being enslaved as a people in Jim Crow. It's the same things that are going on today,
yes,
but in a different form. When you're talking about systemic issues, systemic institutional racism, and many other factors that play into the oppression and exploitation of black people. And see, reparations, we got to understand, we can never truly. Now, of course, there's such thing as self-repair, and we work on that through the knowledge of self because we have a responsibility as well. But as far as the reparations that's owed to us by those who committed the atrocities, if they continue to want to commit those atrocities like mass incarceration, the miseducation of our children, a lack of resources, and then how can we ever as a people rise up? That's why it's important for us to be so involved in the fight here in the 6th region, the diaspora. The brothers and sisters in Africa in organizing, CARICOM, the Caribbean Reparations Commission, they're organizing, and we have organizations here in the United States are organized. But we have to organize locally and put the pressure on the local politicians, the representatives, right, to represent those of us who need representing the most, which are those of us in a lot of ours what they consider to be underserved and marginalized communities. And the question I always ask, who's doing the underserving and who is marginalizing them communities?
That's good. Right. That's good. Can I just take us back just a little bit to the very first question that you asked regarding compensating those who were slave owners. Let me just say this: these were not slave owners; these were human traffickers.
Right.
And so today, it is illegal to be a human trafficker. But guess what? Then it was illegal to be a human trafficker. Right. And so what the caveat of this is that most of the time we see them dictating what should be law and what shouldn't be law. Truth be told, there is no law that says you can hold people in servitude because for whatever reason, if they haven't harmed anybody physically, then what are you holding them for? And to mass steal humans and almost small countries, 12 million people, plus their children before they were born, there is no law for that. So when they say this was legal, no, it was not. And it may be legal in your mind, but the rest of the world says no. 123 countries say is no, right? So that has to go on the books because when we talk about reparations, it's not just about what is given back to us as a people. It's also the punishment that we indict them on. And it is also to say that they can never do this again. See, a lot of times people feel like, well, if they just paid us our $1 trillion or our $1 zillion, we would be fine.
Right.
But no, as you see, they immediately start paying back their perpetrators,
Right.
which means you could pay us $1 trillion and they'll still be able to operate in their own capacity as human traffickers. So not only do we have a duty to repair us, but we also have a duty to make sure that we put handcuffs on an enslavement system.
Right. Right.
And that you can't repair without that. We have to do both offense and defense.
Right. And that's one of the 5 pillars from the NCOBRA, and I know Brother Sar had just mentioned some organizations
Yes.
over here in America. NCOBRA, the National Coalition for Blacks Reparations in America, they have 5 pillars, and I'm gonna go through them in just 1 second. But I wanna before we even go there and get to that and bring it just bring it around full circle. I want to show a few historical reparations that was given.
Right.
And
That's good.
yeah, just to point out that, let me go here with let's start with the Jewish Holocaust reparations. That included direct payments, pensions, property restitution, compensation for forced labor, funding for health care and social services, payments to Israel. It was given to Holocaust survivors, families of victims, the state of Israel, and Jewish organizations. Real quick, couple quick questions. Why do some people support some reparations but oppose reparations for slavery or
For black
African slavery?
I mean, that's part of their plan is to never let the black man rise, and we shouldn't expect them to. We should never expect those who have committed all those atrocities to be a part of our liberation movement. We have to do that ourselves, right?
Yes.
And we have to make demands and put things in motion where we can make sure that we can secure, our community, secure our brothers and sisters, secure Africa, secure our resources, become a world power, right? Because what we have to do is understand not only are we the original people, but we have the original mind. And we are the original creators and innovators of civilization. So with knowing these facts, right, and the enemy know these facts, that's why what they try to do is erase our history.
That's right.
Just like basically everything in dealing with Kemet, which they call Egypt now, trying to erase African history and all of our accomplishments. And that's why history is so important, because when we trace everything back, we'll understand that a lot of the problems that Africa faced today is based off of the invasions. When the invasions started thousands of years ago, and through those invasions, what happened, right? The colonization, imperialization. A lot of these things basically have been taking place for a long time on the continent, right? So it's important to understand, like when we discuss the Papal Bull, right? And Pope Nicholas V, I think it was 1452, when he gave Portugal the right to not only invade Africa, but to enslave any African that wasn't a Christian. And they knew that they weren't no Christians. Right. So you knew that here it is, supposed to be representing the divine, the creator, God, wanting to enslave people. That's why it's so important for us to understand that they really don't look at us as human beings, even though we are the mothers and fathers of humanity. All humanity comes from the black woman and the black man, right? And they know this through scientific research. Even by their scientists, it has been proven that the mother of civilization is an African woman, right? So they'll never basically admit, and that's why the 27 countries in the European Union abstain from voting, because they know that they played the biggest role in the transatlantic slave trade, and by admitting it, it would make the push and fight for liberations for Africans all over the world a lot easier, because they're admitting to what they've done, right? But whether they admit it or not, it has been documented with the United Nations. 123 countries voted in favor of Africa, where it was submitted by Ghana and its president, President John Mahama. 123 countries supported that, which shows how the world feels about the transatlantic slave trade. That's good. Like, one of the points that we made last week about CARICOM, one of the first things they asked for is a sincere apology and acknowledgement. And they have yet to receive that from the European countries.
Come on.
Just like we have yet to receive that from the United States. And like I had stated last week, it's important for us to understand that the United States was up under Great Britain rule at the time. And they are still allies in their fight to be anti-African and anti-black. But they'll be for you if you for them, right? Because then they'll work together to oppress black people, right? So it's so important for us to understand that this thing didn't just start. You got to trace this thing not only back to 1452 with the Pope, but even further back to then when the Hiscos first started invading Kemet.
Dr. Ken, you guys thoughts on?
Well, you know, Brother Ausar is right when you start talking about how they oppress and then they come together. And that's what we saw when we saw United States, Israel, who have already been through an atrocity. You would have thought they would have been first to say that these human trafficking crimes or what have you should be validated. But, of course, people quickly forget. And, again, that is why it's important for us to the repair is also to make sure that we are protected from here on out. And that is, like he said, locally. When I asked for the African American Affairs Board back in 2020, it was immediately after George Floyd. And that was to put protections on us so that we could repair. And when we declared that we are owed those protections so that we can repair, then who is it for any institution to come behind us and dismantle those protections? And so repair is also about making sure that we have protections from westernized behaviors, because we do know that they'll package themselves or revamp themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Morph themselves back into, and they don't. It doesn't take long. Because it's already embedded. It's embedded in westernized culture. Now, I really believe that anything healthy grows. I believe that if we were left alone to do and be who we really are, we would show the world what we're capable of, and we already have. When we go back to Kemet, when we go back to ancient Egypt, and show the magnificent structures, astrology, all of the things that we built in civilization, we go back to who we really are. And that is repair for us as well, to bring back our intellectual, because, right now what they like to show is how we play basketball and how we sing and twerk and tell jokes. And, we are big jokester now. We're the amusement, But we come from civilizations of intellectual property, stuff, a spiritual technology that didn't create one religion, but a spiritual connection. And those are the things that we really have to get back to, not just physical, but also mental and spiritual repair. Because right now, I believe that a lot of us are serving things that really don't enhance who we really were as a people.
And first, let me state this: we're not dismissing any other groups or whatever that got, whatever their compensation, whatever they got. We're talking about ourselves right here and right now, because this transatlantic slave trade was recognized as, if not the most gravest crime in world history, one of the. So I wanted to make that clear.
I think it's important that we make it clear that it was voted on as the gravest crime against humanity.
That's correct.
Not one of them. It is the gravest crime against humanity.
Right.
And that has been documented. Another thing I want to speak to, the point that Dr. Kim was speaking on, when she was talking about the Jewish Holocaust, right? And anytime you say anything about the Jew, how it's anti-Semitic, anti-Semitism.
That's right.
And I want to take a page out of my Jegna, Dr. Elijah Mickle, Baba Akmo, something that he taught me. He said that we had to basically come up with anti-blackism or anti-Africanism. Anytime
That's
something
right.
is said about a black person, a black child, because they attack our brothers and sisters on the news, in the media, any way that they can through propaganda.
Yes.
Right. But anytime anything is said about another community, they had protection. What Dr. Kim was talking about, how we had to have protection.
Yeah.
But this is the most important thing.
Yes.
We have to put protection on ourselves.
Yes.
We cannot expect protection from our enemies, the enemies of our people.
Right.
We have to put protection on our children, our parents, our families, our community, in every area of life. We have to basically really focus on the education department and the miseducation of our children.
That's right.
Right? And the labeling of our children with mental health disorders that they do not suffer from, so that they can put them on the psychotropic drugs.
That's right.
If we're not protecting our children, we're not doing anything.
That is correct.
If we're not protecting our women and our families, and the first line of protection is knowledge. What do we know? The knowledge of self, which helps teach us how to protect our young, how to protect our people, how to protect our community, and how to deal with the enemy that is constantly trying to destroy us. That's why Pan-Africanism is so important. That's why this decade of reparations is so important, so that we can have these serious discussions, right? And if the brothers and sisters out there, if we don't have the courage, we have to develop the courage.
That's
the
right.
courage to come through the knowledge of self.
That is
because
correct.
through the knowledge of self, it's going to teach us why this fight is so important, not only to avenge our ancestors, not only for us what's going on today, but for our future generations.
Yes,
Right.
yes. And they have to have that example, Brother Kevin. They have to see that we will fight for them. I think that's what was so important about the civil rights movement, is that they saw our people willing to stand and take a stand against the wrongs, you know, whether it was nonviolent, whether it was violent. We saw civil rights, but we also saw through our Black Panther brothers who said we refuse to pretend like we're going to be civilized.
Right.
You're not civilized. Why we got to be civilized?
Right.
I mean, this is a battle, and battles are real, you know. And they refused to bring a knife to a gunfight. They brought guns to a gunfight.
That's right.
And so, you know, however you want to choose to look at it, our children need to see the example of what it means to protect them by any means necessary.
That brings me, and I have some other points I want to try to make, but this brings me around
Don't make them
well, first I want, because what y'all just said, it just sparked a thought in my mind about the other day. I think it was Monday of this week, or last
Speak
week
on it,
now,
brother.
because Sunday it's the beginning of the week. But
Yes.
at a local meeting, I forget the name, but they call it the
CAC.
CAC meeting. The first thing that was asked, first of all, the meeting was discussing children from the ages of 6 and maybe up to the age of 12, and all in between there. And the first question that was asked out there was, "Can we shoot them?" Yeah, this was what they asked. You know, about the 6, 7, 8, 10-year-old kids was, "Can we shoot them?" And then after that, the rest of the conversation was all dwelling around criminalizing the children.
Right.
And that was basically it. And y'all, I'm gonna look for the resolution report for the local African American community in Raleigh. But can y'all want to get into
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you know, just, you know, in sharing, the CACs stands for the Citizen Advisory Committees. And it was placed in the city of Raleigh by the first Black mayor, Clarence Lightner, so that those in the community could be abreast or have knowledge of what was going on in the city, or any plans. They would have to bring it to that community. So if they were on a plan to put a new road somewhere or remove whatever, you know, you could discuss those issues as a citizen and decide whether or not this is something good, bad, or indifferent. And after a while, it definitely became more of about developers who wanted to develop in your city and citizens who were for or against. That's where a lot of the CACs came into their focal points. And so who would pretty much come to these meetings was primarily your homeowners who would have an interest into what, because the city's taxes is primarily paid by tax-paying citizens or your homeowners. That's where they extract it from a lot of times. However, here nor there, if we back it up, this particular conversation, because CACs are held either monthly or every other month, I don't know anymore, because they took those away and then they reinstituted them back, and I'm not really sure what they're doing with that. But overall, again, we're talking about young children, like you said, 6 to 10 or 12, who live in the neighboring community, who don't own, are not homeowners. They are what we would call low income. They have a lot of names. However, they're human. And that is the first part that we have to consider, that no matter if they own anything in the city of Raleigh, they should be treated as human. And they were alleged to have thrown and broken windows in this community that is predominantly white, tax-paying because they own their homes, and probably outside of their social economic class. And it pushed them to go hit both their police department and their city council person, which is an African-American male who's probably been in office well over 7 years. Now, it became so irate that they put it on television, where we heard that city council member, who is over both neighborhoods, begin to talk about the parents being the problem, and that they don't take responsibility for any of the programs that are offered in the community, so on and so forth. But he made it as if the parents did better, the children wouldn't commit these so-called crimes. Long story short, that was the focus of the CAC meeting, and yes, they packed it out. The underlying issue that we have, and like we all agree, listening audience, is that we cannot make criminalizing children a social norm. And that is what they did on Monday night. And not only did they criminalize them, but they brought all of the other institutions of enslavement for blacks to the table to join in that fight. And that's what makes it systematic. It's a system. So they went and got attorneys from JCPC, that acronym, I don't like to put out acronyms without saying, but it's the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council or whomever. But this is your juvie court department. We had 2 attorneys come from there. Of course, they had the programs, the Boys and Girls Clubs, and other nonprofits that they wanted to talk about their programs. But it was all to share with these so-called taxpayers what plans they had in place to fix black children, to address this issue. And that was supposed to be their solution, is introducing all these great programs. But mind you, and they also had the property manager, am I right, Brother Kevin? Right. Don Murphy, to come and sort of explain some of the things she's done in the community, but also those programs that are tied to her personally. However, I'm going to go on the record and say, as a property manager, that is not your job. You manage your property. You don't manage the property of the people next door. Right. That has nothing to do with what's going on in Raleigh North, or Raleigh Millbank, or whatever Raleigh, Sir Walter Raleigh and his drama. The issue is that we're trying to we're trying to break a people, and then when we don't like the outcomes, we want to punish them again. Because we do know that for the most part, Raleigh has systematically created the poverty that they see amongst African Americans generationally. And you cannot punish us every generation for what you've done with no aim to repair whatsoever. So, but now you've, we even heard them, other institutions present were teachers. They had called the children's teachers and the schools out to this event as if they were community. This is community. You can't be community if your institution starts out in slavery. Take the name off. Wake County is named after Margaret Wake, a slave owner. So if you really want to be community to black people, take off of the labels. Brother Kevin was talking about the labels they put on us, but those labels come from past labels. Property, chattel. So how do you treat us as humans, but you still have the name upholding the slave owner? You giving out false, and you're sending out false alarms or false messages. And that is why we are glad, well, at least I am, is that our people didn't show up because, first of all, they were never invited. Here we are talking about the citizens and the need for repair the bricks or what have you, and repair the people, but you never even invited them. Nobody from Raleigh North, Raleigh Millbank showed up. So you can't be that serious about accountability because you never even invited them to the table. And in order for you to do that, you would have had to start long before bricks start flying. They would have had to feel human and a part of your community long before your bricks. But you remember, we are disregarded anyway. So then when it becomes a problem, then, you call everybody in. So for the most part, we're talking about the criminalization of children. And like you all said, I didn't get there at that point. What can we do? What are we allowed to get away with? And that question is the same question they asked during slavery. What can we do? What are we allowed to do? Can we just pick them up? Can we rape them? Can we sell the children down the road? They always need that boundary as to how much evil can they do before they themselves are not classified inhumane.
And it was my first time ever, even hearing of a CAC meeting or whatever. So I was observing a lot of it. And now I'm sitting here thinking about it. It was very disgusting because not only were they talking about just criminalizing children, they were talking about taking the children away from the parents, even maybe
evicting.
Evicting, whatever, to the parents and all. Brother Ausar.
Yes. I mean, when the meeting was organized, I decided to attend because, when the story first broke, and I listened to it on the news, and I saw a black reporter talking about children breaking windows and vandalizing the community, and a black city councilman talking about you have some parents who care and some parents who don't care. So it's already there's an attack on the black families and their children that live in the apartment complex right next to this housing complex now. And this is a community I grew up in, the apartment complex.
Right.
And there's never been any problems between the two neighborhoods because it's really one neighborhood and one community. We all grew up together, going to Lions Park, and then went to school together, played sports together. And so I understand it might be an issue here or issue there. But when the meeting started and when the elderly black lady, she asked the question, can I shoot the perpetrator? Right? And the guy said no, and I raised my hand. I said, I'm glad she asked that question because I was going to ask the same question because I don't think throwing rocks is punishable by death. And that's when the police officer said no. I said, so if somebody throw a rock, they can't come out and shoot no child. They said no. I wanted that to be on record.
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
then, you had other people that from that housing development who basically went to talk about how they didn't want to see the children walking up. They just want to do away with them, right? Because what I did was I went back and I watched the whole video, right? And I listened to everything that everyone was saying. I think that there were a lot of violations at that meeting that protect the residents in the low-income housing from any type of intimidation or any type of harassment. And so this was a community meeting, CAC, and when I was me and Linda Darton, shout out to Linda Darton,
Yes.
founder member of KCSSU, when we was researching, and Linda was able to find, under the Fair Housing Act laws and things of that nature, how those things you can't do. And even when you're talking about juvenile confidentiality,
Yes.
right? You cannot reveal certain things about the children if they're under a certain age, and these children were 12 and under. Right? And I thought it was interesting, that this meeting, the CAC, they have a lot of pull when it comes with the city council, right? They can make recommendations when it comes to zoning development and things that go on in that community. And they have a direct line of communication with the police department, because the citizens were also upset with the police department because they feel like they can do more. The police department, they was trying to basically sound diplomatic, but we know how that go, right? So I saw an organized meeting with the city council, captain of the police chief,
Yes.
Wake County District Attorney for Juvenile Court,
Yes.
and JCPC, Juvenile Crime Prevention Center. So that's why I had made the state that, we might need to slow down this meeting because y'all are criminalizing the children. And not only were they criminalizing the children, they were dehumanizing the children.
Yes.
Right? Then they went to criminalizing the parents. Well, if the children aren't old enough, can the parents be charged? And they
Right.
said no. They said, well, can you evict the parents? Which I feel like was a violation, because you cannot not only you cannot try to coerce or try to intimidate residents when they're protected under federal law. And then they went to talking about evicting the parents, CPS, Child Protective Services, right? So now, to me, I'm looking at it like this meeting is all wrong, because no one citizen has more rights than another citizen. We all are protected under the Equal Rights Protection Act law, right, by the federal government. So just because y'all have houses, it don't make y'all over the ones in apartments. They're not slaves. We're not slaves. Right? And you can't, and when they went to talking about the programs, like at Lions Park, the Boys Club, the Teen Center, the Girls Club, it's a reason them children on the team, because for one, they don't have to. Because even if they did attend those programs, it's not going to solve the root cause
That's right.
of a lot of these
Come on,
issues,
Brother Kevin.
which are systemic and institutional
That is
racism.
correct.
They'd rather focus on trying to get the children to go play basketball, go to the boys club, thinking if they don't see the children, that's going to solve the issues in the community, when really at the end of the day, the homeowners just don't want to lay eyes on the children. So they're trying to put the police in a position where they're constantly patrolling, right? And so anyway, when I was doing some study, I ran across a brilliant sister, Dr. Carol Anderson, right? And she wrote a book called White Rage. And she was breaking down black pathology, how and that's what this meeting was about, black pathology. If black people would just do this, get better educated, then all the problems will go away. If black people would just watch their children, if they would just go get a job. Because it was stated that some black people, some of the residents over there, they said had never, they said some of them can't read. That's in all communities, right? Not just that one community.
Right.
They said some of them don't work. That's in all communities. Not just that one community.
Right.
And they said some of them on drugs. That's in all communities. Not just that one community. So what they did was single out that community,
Right.
which can cause division, right? Because you got one community pitted against another, and they don't even stay 100 yards from each other, right? It's one community right there. So I thought that was interesting about the black pathology and how all the blame, and they was blaming who? The children, and they was blaming the parents. But they did not want to look at the system. So one of the things I brought it was the resolution that the city of Raleigh, the city council approved in 2023,
Right.
apologizing for all the wrongs that they've done to African Americans over the last 250 years. And one of those was the criminalization of black people, African Americans, through the criminal justice system, through racial profiling, through lengthy prison sentencing, right? And through other factors that have us where we are mass incarcerated as a people. So I wanted them to look at it. What y'all are doing in here is the same thing that the city of Raleigh apologized for
Yes.
in 2023. And that was criminalizing black people. But not only are they criminalizing black people, they're criminalizing babies, 6, 7, 8, 9,
That's
10, 11,
correct.
12 years old.
Right.
I've had a lot of people reach out to me. They're very upset that they are targeting our children in such a matter. And part of reparations has to be, right, where we put protection on our children and we don't have to worry about them, being attacked and their parents being attacked. When I was studying Dr. Carol Anderson, she said in 1999, Brother Amadou was murdered. 4 police officers pulled up and shot 41 times, 19 of them hit him, and he died, right? And she said the mayor at the time, Rudy Giuliani,
Yes.
was on the Ted Koppel show, Nightline. And Ted Koppel was asking him about that. And he kept ignoring the question, talking about his policies were working, that crime was down, right? And the sister made a point, Dr. Carol Anderson. She said, with broken window policing policies, the same thing that they was talking about at the meeting in Raleigh, the CAC. Broken window policing policies, right? And what broken window policing policies is, like say, and this is an example they use. If you have a building and there's a broken window, if you don't fix it, that's going to invite crime to the community because of a broken window. And that's the tactic that ECAC is using towards, our community over there in Raleigh Millbank Apartments.
I want to go ahead. Go, Dr.
No, well, Brother Kevin, you said, well, when you talk about the broken window theory, and I'm glad that you brought that up because that's a theory that was pretty much attached to the African American community. So, and let me say this, before there's a broken window theory, there's just a broken theory. So remember now, if you don't repair us economically from before, then of course you get this continuum of breakdown. And so our not just our communities, but the families, the family structure, all of the things that, when you don't give out the jobs as a form of repair, but you hold back those resources, then you create the chaos that you're arresting. So first of all, it's really a RICOing type of fact. Hey, Chief Rico boys, basically your police department becomes a racketeering department.
Right.
Because they are creating the breakdown. The city creates the breakdown. They never repair, they never repay, they never take acknowledgement. And if they do apologize, they just keep on doing what they were doing before. There is no accountability factor. They remove the boards that have accountability on them. And they don't want accountability. Matter of fact, when we actually established the police, we actually asked for a police accountability, not a police advisory. Advisory, you don't have to even take my advice.
Right.
So they really don't want to change. They want to look like they changed. The city is founded in white supremacy, and basically that is what they would like to carry out. The only difference is that the lynch mob ain't just white. They've actually recruited black folks. And so that is why, and that's what gives them more legalization to wrong black families and black children. Because now they have black folks that they've purposefully hired to basically whitewash their behaviors. So that, if I can hire him at 6 figures to manage all of you all, then I don't need to really apologize. I can apologize with my mouth and keep operating in the same manner. So it's really not even the broken window theory, is how do we break you first and then create the continuum of the catastrophes until, what outlets do we have? Because guess what? Eventually, there's going to be a breakdown. And those are the things that we would have addressed in the African American Affairs Board is look at what you have done. No, it is now time for you to prepare. But what we got now is we broke you, and now we're going to pay you to try to fix yourself. Why don't we just stop these systematic crimes called war crimes?
I think another thing, basically, when we're talking about the broken window policing policies, is basically it creates hyper policing in our black communities.
That is correct.
Right. And when it creates hyper policing, what that does is they stop and arrest for anything, jaywalking, you know what I mean, spitting on the sidewalk. They just start hyper policing so that if they see you, they could just stop and harass you, right? And that's why Giuliani was talking about how the crime had went down, right? But really, that's just a tactic, right, that they use. And that's a tactic that the CAC is using to get whatever it is that they're trying to get on their agenda, is use the police against the community. So basically what we're trying to do at KCSSU is we would love to organize the community over there in Raleigh Millbank, the parents, and also other African Americans who are concerned, so that we can go to the CAC meetings, because they do have a voice when it comes to policies and recommending it to the city council, right? And I think that if we can get the residents to participate, that's one way of us being able to put protection on ourselves, because we have to be organized. And the one thing I realized, and I think everybody here knows, is that that's what the Europeans, what white people do, is they organize, right? Even when they had to come and get us, they was very organized when they captured and enslaved our ancestors, right? You just don't go and get millions of people without being properly organized. And that's the same thing that we have to do. When we see them organizing against us, we have to organize to protect ourselves. And there's no working with a people who are trying to destroy you. There's no middle road, right? So you're on one side or the other side. Unfortunately, we have a lot of our brothers and sisters who want to be on the side of the enemy, because for some reason they think the enemy is going to change the way they feel about us. No, they're not, and we shouldn't expect them to, right? And I'm not waiting. I'm not going to hold my breath for that to happen, right? What we are about, right, as an African people, is equity, right? In our principles that we teach. Shetawat Netta. Shetawat, the mysterious secrets, that which is hidden. Netta, nature, the cosmic forces, creator, creation. Shetawat Netta enjoins equality between all people. That's what we stand on. Shetawat Netta enjoins equality between men and women. Shetawat Netta enjoins the protection of the weak and oppressed. Shetawat Netta enjoins the sharing of the resources. Shetawat Netta enjoins the proper raising and education of the children. And that's what really disturbed me at the meeting, right? They talked about the children getting in activities, playing basketball, football, baseball, but nothing about education, the knowledge of self, learning our history, our culture. The whole meeting was about what can they do to keep the children from walking in the neighborhood, because they weren't destroying them people's property, right? They just don't want to see them walking in the neighborhood. What can we get these children to do besides walking down in their neighborhood? They don't care anything about the growth and development of our black children, right? That's our responsibility, right? And that's why I was at the meeting, to stand up for a community who wasn't there to stand up for themselves. And if we don't stand up for our communities, and then they're going to come and they're going to do whatever they want to do to our children, they're going to criminalize them and dehumanize them at the young ages of 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which can be devastating for a little child. It can be devastating for a child to basically be attacked and see police officers and JPC talking to their parents because they're accusing that child of something. Nobody's thinking about how that's going to affect the child psychologically, right, for the rest of their life. But they don't care because they want us to be affected in a negative way psychologically, right? Without really understanding, we should never give our power over to the mental health system because of the admission of the American Psychiatric Association that they intentionally and deliberately misdiagnose black children and black adults so that they put them on psychotropic drugs that was going to harm them.
It has some mental health
Implication.
people in there also,
Right.
if I'm not mistaken.
Did they have mental health
Yeah,
professionals there?
Someone was real. I wanna go the resolution of 2023 for the African American community in Raleigh. First, I want to read this because I don't know if anybody else know. I know I needed to know what it was. Reparatory justice and what it really is. Reparatory justice is a framework focused on acknowledging, addressing, and repairing the enduring physical, material, and moral harms caused by historical injustices like slavery and colonialism. It moves beyond simple compensation to include truth-seeking, apologies, and systemic reforms designed to redress long-term impacts. And I didn't know if anybody else. I know I needed to know what that was.
That's beautifully said.
Yeah, that's a real good
That's right
wrap
on
up.
point. You know,
So,
Yeah.
that's something that it says that I keep hearing y'all say systemic reform.
yes.
Right. So
It's no reparations if it's not systemic reform.
Right.
If they are able to continue to do the things that they've done to us on a global basis, and then there is no reparations.
Right.
We have to. That's why this is the decade of reparations, and we have to be real serious, and we have to teach our children about reparations and why it's important, and all the components that go into reparations. Right.
That's good.
Compensation is one of them.
Yes.
But like you just said, systemic reform,
Yeah.
which I think is one of the major things that we have to focus on, right? And not only that, when we're talking about, I think one of the things that and this is one of the things that, Ghana, had said that they want, one of the demands is return all of the stolen goods from Africa, right? Return the stolen goods to
God.
all of us here in the diaspora, right? That which was promised to us, that which was taken to us, right? The 300 and something years of unpaid wages that's owed to our ancestors, right? That can be given to the descendants so that we can leave it for our future generations, creating generational wealth, right? Economics is very important in this reparations fight that we're in. And that's one of the things they don't want because they want to keep their foot on our neck at all times. That's why we got to organize locally, statewide, nationally, and globally.
So the resolution supporting community reparative justice for the African American community in Raleigh. Whereas African and African American persons have been unjustly enslaved, lynched.
Hold on one second. I want everybody to know what Brother Escents is reading right now is the 2023 resolution that was submitted. It was submitted by some Europeans, Quakers, right? And the city of Raleigh City Council agreed to it. So now when he's talking about the whereas, these are all the admissions to all the harms that they have done to Africans over the last 250 years. Pardon me, brother.
No, good. I'm glad you broke it down so that
Yes.
they can follow with me. Whereas African and African American persons have been unjustly enslaved, lynched, segregated, and incarcerated. Whereas African American persons have experienced housing discrimination by government agencies, banks, and the private real estate market through redlining, steering, block busting, denial of mortgage loans, urban renewal, gentrification, and more. Whereas African American communities have been harmed by the health effects of environmental racism, including the disproportionate location of industrial, dump, and toxic waste sites in African American neighborhoods. Whereas African American persons have been harmed by economic disinvestment in their communities by banks and grocery stores, creating food deserts and lack of access to key services. Whereas African American persons have experienced employment discrimination restricted opportunities, and wage disparities in the local economy, regardless of credentials and experience. Whereas African American businesses and communities have suffered from a disproportionately low share of economic development funding, whereas African American students have been educationally marginalized through the history of segregated, unequal school systems and persistent achievement gap due to underinvestment, discriminatory disciplinary practices, and exclusion from academically gifted and advanced placement in honors classes. Whereas African American communities suffer from a history of inadequate and detrimental health care, as exemplified by disproportionate morbidities and mortality rates resulting from the generational trauma of white supremacy, discriminatory treatment by medical professionals, medical deserts, involuntary sterilizations, denial of adequate testing, preventive and curative procedures. Whereas African American persons have been targeted by the criminal justice system through racial profiling, police brutality, inadequate legal representation, prosecutorial misconduct, unjust rulings, harsh sentencing, and barriers to reintegrating into society. Whereas local, state, and federal governments have a moral, practical obligation to adopt policies, develop programs, and allocate funding to redress demonstrable harms to African Americans to which those governments have contributed. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Raleigh that Section 1, the City of Raleigh 1 apologizes for Raleigh's past participation in, enforcement of, and benefiting from the enslavement of African and African American persons. 2, apologies for Raleigh's enforcement of segregation and Jim Crow laws. 3, apologies for Raleigh's designing and implementing urban renewal programs that destroyed multiple thriving African American communities in Raleigh. 4, authorizes the city using expertise of city staff and others as the city manager deems appropriate to develop information to include on the city's website explaining the history of enslavement, unequal treatment, segregation, Jim Crow laws, and urban renewal in Raleigh. 5, directs the city's Human Relations Commission to continue efforts to educate all people, public institutions, and private institutions about racism in all its forms consistent with the Commission's adopted work plan. 6, authorizes city administration to assess needs and formulate projects, proposals, and budgetary requirements aimed at promoting equality, exploring the root causes of poverty, and actions to address them, and addressing unmet needs of all people within the city of Raleigh, specifically including needs of African American community prompted by the history of enslavement and unequal treatment, segregation, Jim Crow laws, urban renewal in Raleigh. In carrying out this directive, city administration should use the expertise of city staff and others as the city manager deems appropriate, collaborate with state and county agencies, and provide options as allowed by law. 7, commits to continue to city's work to address racial inequities as allowed by law, and periodically receive reports from the Human Relations Commission and efforts directed to eliminating discrimination and racial inequities. 8, calls on all governments at all levels to initiate reparative justice policies and continue work to address racial inequities as allowed by law. And that was
That's all of it?
yes, sir.
No, that's not all of it.
Well, oh no, I'm sorry.
Please go to Section 2.
Section 2. I missed them. This resolution shall be effective upon its adoption. Adopted July 5th, 2023. Effective July 5th, 2023. Distribution, the city manager, Adams David Millette, Boyne Payne,
Bona Payne.
Bono Payne, the city attorney, Kibler Poole Richardson, Hargrove Belly, the community engagement, Hinton, the clerk's office, Taylor and Pusini. and that's prepared by the Raleigh City Attorney's Office. And that was it.
Wow, that was interesting, right? And that's why, I feel like that the time is right for us here in Raleigh, the capital city of this state, North Carolina, to organize because we have something to work with right
Absolutely.
there, which is the resolution where they're talking about reparations. But yet, they haven't made not one step whatsoever in making sure that they honor the resolution that they approved as far as the treatment of Africans here in the city of Raleigh over the last 250 years.
And let me say this: that's why we created the board for African Americans 3 years before they even did the resolution
2020.
in 2020, immediately after George Floyd. Why? Because we needed to make sure that they upheld. While they were all saying that they were committed to change, they even had, they had some seminars for the city council members. They had a retreat after George Floyd to talk about the atrocities that had happened. You had Mayor Ann Baldwin, who had no idea that her lowest paid population of employees were your sanitation workers that were like almost 90% black. So these people live in a glass bubble of which, and that's the reason why this is so important, Brother Kevin, is because some of these white counterparts have never had to look at the atrocities that they've committed because they were all legal. See, as soon as you tell them it's legal, that means whatever they do is acceptable. So they never had to look at it as a crime. They never had to look at human trafficking as a crime. It was legal. It was their way of saying we own slaves. You can't own people. But because they made it legal, it strips them from having a consciousness. And so now when we bring it to their attention, they go, that was perfectly okay. It happens. But then when you have African Americans who work amongst them, you would think those who are in representation would inform them. The question is, are they using our African Americans to maintain us, or are they informing them of the atrocities and how things go? Now, let me say this. When the George Floyd incident happened, then they changed a lot of the ways without African Americans saying anything. If you'll notice, they start putting policies in place and corporations start just magically saying we're going to commit to doing the. They didn't even need a black person. The only black person they needed to have them change was George Floyd. So then what good are our African American officials and appointed persons? Because they can turn the switch on and off whenever they get ready. They have a conscience today, they don't have a conscience tomorrow. Help me now, Brother Kevin. What good are the African Americans? Because we could have been to repair. I thought the name of the game is to get in good places so that we can make change. But if they are in these places and they don't even bring up our own atrocities, then what good are they? How do we repair with people who look like us but they're not with us?
Of course. I think.
I'm sorry. I had to put that. I had to ask my brothers.
Go ahead.
No, well, I just wanted to make a point about what she was saying about African Americans in certain places. I think they take certain kinds of African Americans and put them there, and then they can use it and say, well, it's not a racial thing. Okay, it's a systemic and institutional thing, but we all know that the system only thrives off racism. Right. Go ahead, brother. So.
No, that's perfect because the one thing I want to say, right, and I think this is important, not only for this resolution here in the city of Raleigh, but also the resolution that Ghana submitted to the United Nations, and that is mostly everything that you just named is still taking place today. Right, as far as the education with the children, the poor health care,
right.
The poor development when it comes to economics in our community. So it's not like that they're going to be paying reparations for something that happened in the past. Reparations for what's going on right today.
That's right.
And like Dr. Kimberly just stated, if we don't stop a lot of these activities by the oppressors, and then we'll never receive reparations. The good point that Dr. Kim just made and you just made about our public officials that are black, right? Their participation. And then the first thing they want to say, and they said the other night, it's not a black or white issue. It is a black or white issue.
Right.
It's
That's
a
right.
systemic issue dealing with systemic and institutional racism. They try to protect themselves by putting black officials in certain positions that make it look like it's not systemic racism. It don't matter who you put there, right? It's through the laws and the policies that they practice. Those are what they enforce.
That's right.
The policies. And really it's like I had a great conversation with Baba Atmos this morning. And basically, we was talking about Samuel Cartwright in 1852 when he talked about drapetomania, right, as a mental illness when a black person, an African, was trying to be free and escape, right? So he said now what they do, instead of, saying drapetomania, they say schizophrenia, what they did back in the 1960s in Michigan, when a lot of the brothers were organizing, right, and basically demonstrating for freedom, justice, and equality in the United States. So they deemed these brothers as being schizophrenic, sick, because they was fighting for liberation, and locked them up in mental health facilities,
Right.
asylums.
Right.
So I think that
That's
it's
right.
important to understand that, we're going to be looked at in a certain way anytime that we stand up and raise our
That's a
voice.
good point,
right?
brother.
And the one thing they want to do is continue to instill fear within us, because they know if they have us where we're scared to stand up for ourselves, we're not going to do anything about it. That's why the knowledge of self is so important, to give the children the knowledge of self, the parents, because then not only do we learn how to defend ourselves from being oppressed and exploited, but how do we come together as a people and build to protect ourselves so that we can become a power within ourselves, not only locally and nationally, but globally. And I feel like, that really has to be the goal, even when we're talking about reparations, because out of reparations, we have to get power. We have to have black power. We cannot be afraid of power. We can't look at black power as something that's bad, because we know once we return as sitting on the throne as kings and queens, that we're going to judge and rule righteously.
That is correct.
Right? With humanity at the core of everything that
good.
we do.
That's good.
Which is in our principles
Right.
that I shared earlier, the equality between all people, right? Equality between men and women, the sharing of the resources,
Right.
proper raising and education of the children, right? The movement towards balance and peace. The first one, Shetwat Netta and Jones, the main purpose of life is the great awakening, to know thyself. Spiritual enlightenment, right? So we have principles that Shetwat Netta Jones, the protection of nature. We believe in protecting the environment, right? So if we as black people really understood our history and our culture and what our ancestors not only gave to us, but left for us,
Yes.
we'll understand the brilliance that we have, the brilliance of our children. We wouldn't let others attack our children the way our children was attacked the other night without sticking up for them. Dr. Amos Wilson, he always talked about the natural genius of a black child and how black children have a head start. But once they go to school, they pull us back.
That's right.
We have to
That's
protect our children with knowledge. That's why it's so important for us to organize locally, statewide, nationally, and globally to put protection on our children, our women, our families, our communities, and build institutions so that we can dismantle the white power structure regime, global Eurasian imperialism, white supremacy, anything that we want to call it, right? And push for global African power.
And let me say this, Brother Kevin. You said powerfully. I mean, that was a mouthful. I think I'm going to always go back to us defining truth.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Because when we even say the word system, what white dominants have learned how to do is to misrepresent, mislabel, and miseducate. Those are three things. And then once they do it, they get us to co-sign under duress.
Right.
So in order for you to eat, we're gonna remove DEI. Remember, this administration, Donald Trump's administration, says in order for you to keep your funding or we send you funds, we have to remove DEI because it means something. and we have to replace it with this language. And so we have to be very careful about how either we're educated or we are indoctrinated. Either way, whatever we decide to be, either we step out and say we will not take that lie. We are not slaves. See, 400 years was 2019. We just started using the language that we were not slaves. We were enslaved, which is an action.
Right.
We were never your slaves, and you was never a master. You are a human being that put on your clothes just like we do. So we have to sometimes stop the train of false information, false literacy, and all these other things. And then what are we being, we talk about literacy, but what are we learning? So even if the children don't learn how to read anything, they know how to comprehend the world that is around them. Right. And they know what injustice look like. Right. Our children at 5 years old know what it looks like to step outside their doors and see a baby mansion on one side. They'll learn later what gentrification is. But they're going to look and see, like, how did we end up here? And then how did this end up here? And it's one community, like Brother Ausar said. What are we allowing this culture to impose on us? Because we're not learning this because we chose to. We were imposed this kind of lifestyle. And I think that you can't repair yourself until you decide to reject all lies. See, we're talking about, when we talk about systems, we are talking about people who set up stuff for us never to succeed. And if we do succeed, it's only because we're under control, watched. You remember now? Yeah. We got to be watched to see how well we maintain. Because let me ask you this. Even after we graduate every year from these institutions, what can we show in our communities belong to us? What businesses? Outside of church, which is religion, they use religion to keep us docile, the funeral home, and the beauty salons. So you look good dying, and you can go to religion. What other businesses do we have to show that we interact with each other on a daily basis? That means we're still under some form of control. Mental control, economic control. And people, we don't want to talk about that. So the only ones who really look like they're prospering are the ones who go get them a government job. Right. The highest paid Negroes in our society or in our community are ones who, first of all, have to swallow white supremacy in its systems itself. Mm-hmm. So they say they pay them to manage us. Not economic empowerment. We're not economically empowered. We still have to get money from them. We still have to get their grants. We have to get their subsidies. No one has said, but the black people are owed reparations. They're not owed this. So when they put these black people in place, they better be able to define success based off of white supremacy success for us.
So, yeah. So I'm gonna go back to another form of reparations that was given out, the Japanese Americans through the Civil Liberties Act in 1988. And that was because over 120,000 Japanese Americans was forced into internment camps. Mm-hmm. And they received formal apologies and compensation also. So quick question about that, or just about the other groups that do receive their little apologies and compensation. Is it something that we can learn from about how they organized, or
no
their documentation? No. They kept anything?
No. It doesn't matter.
Look.
And it doesn't matter. And that's a really good question, because see, everything we have to do on our own. We are the original people. That's why I always state when I open up, I am the original man. Right. Everything comes after us.
That's right.
We have the original mind. We are the original creators, innovators, built civilization. We don't need... Now, it don't mean we can't learn from people, because and that's a good point you made, because we can learn. But when it comes to reparations, right, only thing you have to do right? It's just look at, for one, the resolution by Ghana, and look at the stance that the United States took and the other European countries took, right? They don't mind Japan. See, they're not trying to invade and take over Japan the way they trying to do Africa, because Japan don't have resources,
Gotcha.
right? Africa has all the resources, right? The goal is not to let Africa become a global world power, because of the power that we would have if we were a global world
Go on,
power,
Brother Kevin.
because of what we already have on the continent, right? And what we're able to produce. And that's why we're trying to become more industrialized, where, you know, in Africa, we can take the raw materials, produce it ourselves, and sell it to the world, right? Not only will we become a global power, but we will become the most dominant global power.
Yeah.
And see, that's what makes Europe so powerful, is the invasion of African countries. That's why they had the Berlin Conference in 1884 and 1885 with all the European nations, because they knew the riches that was in the land, right? And they also knew that how they could basically use and exploit us the way they did what? During the transatlantic slave trade, when they enslaved our ancestors. Now that slavery was over, they had to figure out another way. And I think that they have reaped more benefits off of the resources in Africa than they did in enslaving us as a people, right? So they're always trying to figure out how to dominate Africa and Africans, the resources, and kill us at the same time.
Russia.
And to piggyback on his point, not only the resources in the ground, but the resources on the ground also. 1.4 billion.
That's right.
Or more.
The most powerful resource.
Right.
The people.
And when you don't have any natural resources on the ground, they'll start exploiting the land itself.
That's right.
And that's what we see here. When they gentrify, they take our wealth or where we stand, and they multiply it for white supremacy, so that now their worth is higher without any resources under the ground. So it's always, how do we exploit or extract some kind of value, whether it comes with a substance or whether it doesn't.
And let me say this, because I really want to give a lot of love and respect to the AES with Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger.
Yes.
And the great leaders that they have as presidents, the military leaders, because what they have done is throughout the world globally, right? Not only on the continent of Africa, but here in the 6th region, diaspora, was instill inspiration in us, and courage to push the French out, right? And nationalize the resources where that the citizens benefit from the resources in the country, right? And of course, you know that the European countries are countering like crazy in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, because they want to take over. Because now their economy is falling, because now they're not getting all the free money, right? The great queen, the sister, Dr. Ericana Chilbori, right? Before they dismiss her as the permanent ambassador for the African Union to the United States, right? She was speaking on how France received over $500 billion every year from 14 African countries, right? And she spoke strong about it. That's why they got rid of her.
Absolutely.
Right? But see, her message stuck. And I know that it wasn't the first time that message had been put out, but it stuck. And it inspired those 3 countries, right? And so now the whole Africa is inspired. I know that there's a lot of, chaos that's created that go on in Africa, like the Sudan and in the Congo. But, with a Pan-African movement like what's going on today, we're going to fix all the problems that we have. It's just a matter of us keeping the momentum. The African Union, I salute them, making this the decade of reparations, and I think the decade of reparations is a great title, and I feel like every black person on this planet should get involved in the reparations movement, because it's not just about compensation, and it's about self-reparations, it's about self-healing, and it's about those who committed all the atrocities.
That's right.
Paying for the crimes that they
committed. Right.
I think that's important because any little thing they do, right, they want to criminalize our children and lock them up at the age of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old because they say they throwing women. Throwing rocks. Yeah. But yet, everything that they've done to us, they don't feel like they should be held accountable for. Mm-hmm. They don't even really want to acknowledge it. Yes. Right? But yet they want to continue to criminalize and dehumanize our children. And I think that's why we have to act on that resolution, right? And me and my big brother and Linda Dalton, we put together a beautiful letter and sent to the police chief, yes. Rico Boss, the city councilman. We're going to send it to the mayor. We're going to send it to the congresswoman,
that's right.
Deborah Ross, and we really want to get it printed, right? Because this is going to show how the city's resolution, this meeting that was attended by a city councilman, right? He sat there and listened to a lady say, and the police officers too, can we shoot the perpetrator? And the lady wasn't reprimanded, spoken to, or anything. They let that comment go, right? And then they want to talk about the mindset of the children and their parents. And I said, well, I can understand that, but we also got to think about the mindset here in this room, right? The mindset in this room to shoot an unarmed child is unacceptable. Mm-hmm. It's unacceptable, and I don't think that we could just take that line down. Not when they're putting on the news that children are, and they called it petty crimes. Everything they said about the child was a petty crime.
Right.
And that's why I think that broken window policing policy is so important, because what that does is gives them a chance to escalate the situation, to make it seem like these children are going to become career criminals.
Right. And then they were already criminalizing them because they said, how can we shoot the perpetrator?
Right.
So they didn't even give them the acknowledgement of being a child who had who hadn't developed or whatever. They call them perpetrators, which is a word used for an adult.
Right.
And so they've already and this doesn't come overnight.
Do they look at our children as children?
No, they don't. They enslaved our children. Remember, right. Slavery didn't exempt children. And as soon as they were able to have children, at the age of 12, yeah. they were sexualized to breed this nation. So why would we even think that they had any respect for our children? Right. And we understand, yes, there should be a level of mercy that's given to children, but as you can see, they don't have that either. Tamir Rice in Ohio was shot by the police at 12 years old. They didn't even give him a chance to put the gun down. They gave one command and seconds, not minutes, to negotiate. Like you see some of these white folks that's waving their gun or brandishing their gun, and then they walk away scot-free. This baby was shot by police officers, so they do not see our children as children. They see our children as a threat to their communities. They see our children, and they don't have to be doing anything wrong. Our children don't have to be doing anything wrong, no more than our men had to do anything. In this day and age, you may see them come after those who probably they don't have a suit and a hat on. But if you all recall, our lynchings consist of black men who had a whole suit, tie on, hat. They weren't thugs. They weren't, you know what I'm saying, the quote-unquote criminalization. These were black men who spoke their mind and spoke truth to power, and they ended up dead. And not just murdered, lynched, which is two different things.
Well, one of the things that really bothered me Monday night, and it bothered a lot of people I know, friends I have, and people, in the community who ran across the video. They did not like the way the police officers were trying to approach me for standing up and speaking out for the children at a community meeting. Right? And everyone knows when I'm in a meeting, anytime, even on the radio, that my language is always clean. Right? There's never a personal attack on any individual. Right? So basically, I'm talking about the different values and principles that aren't being given to our children and our people. So a lot of people felt a certain type of way because they felt like that anytime a black person, a black man stands up and voices his opinion, they automatically want to criminalize and dehumanize me because they were trying to move to me fast. And you can see in the video, two retired officers and two active officers
Definitely.
that was coming towards me. And I told them I don't need no help leaving because I stood up to leave on my own.
Right.
But they always try to escalate the situation, right? And I'm going to address that, with the police department, the police chief, city council, and everyone. Because, don't try to violate my right to speak up for our community and to speak up for our children, right? And it really disturbed a lot of people, right? Because, our organization, KCSSU, we have been basically working in this community. This is our 14th year. The very center that the meeting was held at, Lions Park, we've had over 10 book bag giveaways.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Toy giveaways for Christmas. And the ECAC is the same ones that was organized before they dismantled all the organizations. It's the same group, ECAC, that honored and gave KCSSU and myself an award for working in the neighborhood in 2017.
Wow.
And now they wanted to attack me, fight me, and lock me up for speaking up for the children in the community.
Wow.
Definitely. And it was definitely a few active police officers. And I guess some was retired because it was.
No, they were retired.
Someone was retired.
Quite a few of them were retired.
Okay.
They was deep in there. But my people reached out. Right. Yeah. My people reached out to me, my friends and everybody, and they asked me when the next meeting. So next time, we going in there deep. Nation of Islam, everybody, right? Because we're going to support one another, right? And we're not going to let, somebody who's speaking up for the children in the community be put in danger because they don't like what I'm saying. And everything I said was the truth. And I said that. And I came back. After I left out, I came back. And I told them at the end that y'all got to understand respect. Everybody was very disrespectful towards me. Because when everybody else spoke, people listened. But as soon as I started to talk, ain't nobody want to hear what I had to say because I was sticking up for the children. And I said, what it is y'all don't want to hear the truth. And I said, that's the first thing we teach the children. Maya, truth, justice, and righteousness.
Well, I mean, help me understand where in the city of Raleigh. And remember now, we're talking about low-income housing. We're talking about places that need subsidies. Let's be honest. Where can you find a community or an apartment complex this large with this many children that are white? None. There is not. That in itself should give us be a red flag. How did they even get here? Why are there an entire community of black children who are disenfranchised from economic empowerment? That's unheard of. And if that doesn't bother you first of the population and the condition, your job is not just to give us shelter. It was also to give us opportunities. Right. And so really what we should be looking at is, in what way have our opportunities been sabotaged? Because obviously when you read this off, it is saying that somebody stole something, and I'm almost for certain opportunities is one of them. It may not list it, but after you say have been unjustly enslaved, segregated, and incarcerated, we're talking about systematic breakdown of resources and opportunities. And after you do that for so many generations, then what do you expect people to do? Just because you got, the Wake County and all these little entities come out and throw a balloon bash and give you hot dogs, we all supposed to run out the door and take advantage of the opportunities. They want us to run, our children to run out the door because they came. And now we're supposed to make them feel good about themselves when our children and our parents come to eat their hot dogs and pizza in the parking lot while they give out resources that they stole.
Right.
Okay, wait a minute. Resources that they stole, that they owe us.
Right.
but you've done dressed it up like you doing us a favor. And so we're supposed to come out. There's so many diabolical and mixed messages.
No, definitely.
Till I don't know what your intent is. Remember now, it's the same government that gave everybody syphilis in the Tuskegee. I remember even during COVID, some black people were scared to go to the churches to get their shot because they were paying the churches to host the
That's right.
come on. Why should we be so
Gullible.
and trusting of your government? Obviously, this portion of the community, because Brother Ausar said it is one, is leery of coming to your CAC meetings. Not on this topic alone, but I can assure you that they don't come to none of your CAC meetings. And remember, the CACs was dismantled because of white supremacy.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I want to say something right quick about the resolution. Not only the resolution from the city of Raleigh, but the resolution from Ghana that was submitted to the United Nations, right? And this is where it gets tricky because the first thing they want everybody to know that the resolution is not legally binding, right? But basically what it does it kind of puts you in a position to push for policy change, law change, not only, through the acknowledgement, but the key thing I feel like here is knowing that it's not legally binding, right? But they will create laws to legally bind us,
That's
right, and incarcerate us. So that's why, and I'm going to say it again, like Kwame Ture always say, organize, organize, organize. That's the most important thing that we can do. A lot of these national organizations like NCOBRA and the National African Americans Reparations Commission, people don't even know about it. I'm just learning about them recently, right? These organizations in the decade of reparations has got to become household names.
That's right.
Where all black people globally know what's going on. This is a decade of reparations. So that we can all pour our energy, right, into the reparations movement, because the reparations movement is a movement that has to take place each and every day in our lives when it comes to self-repair.
That's true.
Right? And preparing our children for a future of success instead of a future of being oppressed and exploited, and we're always trying to stay out the way of the enemy. We can't stay out the way of the enemy because we got to get the enemy out the way.
That's right.
And it's going to take power on our part, to make that happen.
Well, Brother Esar, why do you think that when we even declare something that's truth, we got to apologize first?
We don't. That's a psychological trick that we play on ourselves. Right?
It's true.
We have to understand that we cannot play a part in black pathology ourselves.
That's right.
Well, we criminalize ourselves and we criminalize the children, we criminalize the parents. I often hear everybody always say the parents. That's easy. That's black pathology. You're saying now that if the parents get themselves together, the world gonna be a better place. Ain't no way. Not with white supremacy controlling the events of the world.
That's right.
Right? So that's a trick for us to make us focus on our children without focusing on those who are creating the problems that not only that our children suffer from, but that we suffer from as well.
It's true.
We have got to be wise. We have got to basically raise our consciousness to a level where we're always conscious of being conscious, right? And that way we can't let them play any types of political tricks on us, psychological tricks on us, social tricks on us, where we send our children to their schools for them to prepare them for the school to prison pipeline.
It's true. Come on. And then at the end of the day, when you open up your statement with this is not an indictment or this is not a criminal, the offense is criminal.
Right.
And that is what we just don't want the acknowledgement. We also want to press charges on countries
That's right.
that did these atrocities. Right. Make no mistake about it. We're not here to have a conversation about reparations. We want repair.
Right.
And we want those countries who did it to be held accountable. Because you asked the question about the other countries or people who have been paid back. Like the African American Affairs Board, we had to go to the city and ask, we never saw a Hispanic population of people go down to the city and protest to ask for a Hispanic board or immigration board. That was automatically created by Marianne Baldwin, who was your mayor at the time. So basically, what they're saying is they already know we are deserving of reparations. They want to deliberately hold us back from getting it because they'll give it to whomever they want to give it to.
Right.
You didn't see the Jews protesting saying, give us reparations from Germany. What protest did you see? There is no documented protest that said Japan came down to the United Nations or whomever and asked for repair. This is people that they believe they are deemed worthy of repair. Us, they do not.
So the African American board was what happened with that?
So we asked for this immediately after George Floyd. Corey Branch was the first who actually put the motion in. He heard us. Mm-hmm. He put the motion in, and everybody unanimously voted yes. We're here October 7th, and basically, and I believe that's the day. I know Byron Laws addressed it in that frame time. But last year, mind you, we get a new mayor, another white female Democrat, who said we have too many boards. And I think we have about 30 boards in the city of Raleigh. She made the suggestion that those boards need to be consolidated. Well, come to find out, the only board that was consolidated that I know of is the African American Affairs Board. And she put it with the Immigration Board as if we were immigrants, and the Hispanic Board. And who voted to side with her was the very ones who actually voted to have it established in the first place. So now look at the influence and the bullying, and and why did they now side with her? Speculation. But again, the ones who voted against were all new council members who were not at the original. They had come on later on, and they were fresh-minded, independent thinkers who were going, why would you do that? Will the African-American population have enough time to argue their issues if they're conglomerated with the Hispanic and immigrants in a 1-hour meeting? Because they have a meeting so often, and it's maybe like an hour or so. Yeah. When will we actually get a chance? Our atrocities are so great that they had to make a whole resolution. Yeah. So, so when we look for our representatives to stand up for us, we get nothing.
It's time to stand up, they sit down.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then they become COINTELPRO at our children. Not adults, but children. And criminalize them and ask for them to be locked away. This right here, if this resolution doesn't say criminals, they shouldn't even be allowed to apologize. Right. Criminals don't get a chance, shouldn't apologize and then carry on with business as usual. With this kind of stuff, they said they lynched us. That's murder.
That is.
That ain't, they call it lynching. We should be saying you should be held accountable for murder.
Crime against humanity.
Daryl Wims was murdered on Rock Quarry Road. Right. And his death certificate says homicide.
They murdered him.
They murdered him. Yeah. See, that's why I talk about education and how we deal with things. Because anytime you see homicide on anybody else's death certificate, somebody is going to jail.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
They get to apologize. Their punishment is
an apology.
Sorry.
So, piece of paper.
Piece of paper, sorry. And they didn't even come up with this. The city of Raleigh did not make this.
The Quakers. Right.
The Quakers made this and presented them to sign it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I can remember when Brother Byron Laws came through and gave us a thorough understanding of the African American boards and how it got watered down with or consolidated with the others. Um, so real quick before we have to turn the lights off, I wanna I wanna go through a couple of these couple programs or organizations that is out there already with an establishment and already addressing these reparatory justices already. And we probably mentioned them before. I think Brother Saw just mentioned just a few seconds ago. The National African American Reparations Commission, which was established in April 2015, and is composed of distinguished professionals from across the United States with expertise in law, medicine, journalism, academia, history, civil rights, and social justice. Um, NARC is dedicated, short for the National African American Reparations Commission. NARC is dedicated to addressing the historical and ongoing impacts of slavery, segregation, and systemic discrimination on African American communities, aiming to achieve compensation, restoration, and reparatory justice. The 10-point plan that they have put together, one was an apology and Ma'afa Institute, which is a formal apology for slavery and systemic oppression. Um, repatriation, and which is recognition of the right to repatriate cultural and ancestral artifacts and the creation of an African knowledge. Land, the right to land for social and academic development. Funds, financial resources for cooperative enterprises and socially responsible entrepreneurship. Health and wellness, resources for health, wellness, and healing of Black families and communities. Six, education. Education programs for community development, empowerment, and cultural preservation. Housing and wealth generation, affordable housing for healthy Black communities and wealth building initiatives. Eight is info and comms infrastructure, which is strengthening Black America's information and communications infrastructure. Nine, sacred sites and monuments, which is preservation of Black sacred sites and the monuments of the Blacks. And 10 is criminal justice and system repeal, which is reforming the criminal justice system to address the harms of systemic injustice. Um, then we have NCOBRA, which we said just a few shakes ago. The NCOBRA, which is the National Coalition for Blacks Reparations in America, and their 5 pillars was restitution, which is to restore what was taken or lost. Compensation, pay for harms and the losses. 3 is rehabilitation, provide support for healing and recovery. 4, satisfaction, acknowledge the harm, offer apology or memorialization. And the 5th pillar was guarantees of non-repetition, which is to change the system
Right.
so the harm does not continue.
That's
It's
what Dr.
good.
Kim was talking about.
Yes.
Yes.
That's
yes.
perfect right there.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
See,
powerful.
no, can you read number 10 again,
Yes.
From the 5 pillars, number
From
5
that
from the
last-
5 pillars.
The 5 pillars,
Yeah.
my fault. Yes.
Number 5 from the 5 pillars is the guarantees of non-repetition, which is the change of systems so the harm does not continue.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's
I-
good.
I,
Definitely.
I
That's
really
good.
like that.
Definitely.
Amen. Absolutely.
With
That's
Ink
good.
Cobra. And,
Yeah.
and you know, that's the group that we're trying to form when I'm gonna say trying. That's the group that we're gonna form a chapter with here
Yes, that's
in Raleigh, North Carolina, in Cobra. Incredible brothers and sisters.
Yes.
You know, with a whole lot of knowledge, and I had spoke to a couple of members of Cobra, and I invited the sister from Asheville that's a part of Cobra to come and be on our panel for our event June 7th
Yes.
at John Chavis Memorial Park. And the title of the event is Reclaiming Our Legacy.
Yes,
Right? And
that's
basically
good.
we're going to talk about the Ghana's resolution. We're going to talk about reparations. We got Dr. William A. Darity, who wrote a book on reparations, well-renowned scholar, who's going to be the keynote speaker and part of the panel.
Okay.
Good job.
Give you gave the date, but the time and everything.
Yes, indeed. The time is 2 p.m. To 6 p.m. at John Chavis Memorial Park, 505 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, 27601. That's the address. Food will be served. Lunch will be served. We're inviting the community and everyone who wants to be a part of the reparations movement to come and be a part of it. Listen to what's being said. Ask questions, or if you have comments, give your comments. We encourage everyone to come and be a part of this event. So moving forward, that we can build for reparations for our brothers and sisters on a global basis.
Yes.
Indeed. Dr. Ken, you like to leave any final thoughts with the people tonight or today?
Stand up, stand strong, fight back. And that is what we have to do, because we have to take back our dignity and our mental health, and we have to take back what has been stolen from us.
True indeed. And as for me,